What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another edition of the Jays for Days podcast. I'm Josh. He's Josh. We got Jays Jumpers, Jaron Jackson Jr.'s, John Moran's, Joe Johnson's, Ja Raff's, of course. We've got Jays. We got him for days. Josh, how you doing?
So apparently, Patrick Mahomes has a kryptonite. And who would have thought it would have been Jared Goff?
I'm gonna stop you right there. What we learned last night is how bad the Chiefs' receiving room is. We didn't learn.
But,
I mean,
you're
great. You scored
correct.
21 points against the Chiefs defense that didn't have Chris Jones. Great. Congratulations.
All I'm saying is I believe that Jared Goff is now 2-0 in his career against Mahomes.
Okay. I'm super happy for Jared Goff. Super happy for him. This was going to be an overreaction game either way.
Yes.
I think. Now, the fact that the Chiefs receiving room is like truly horrible is probably not an overreaction, but the idea that the Chiefs are going to suck as a result of this game, like as long as Travis Kelce doesn't like compound his hyperextension into a more serious knee injury, then like they're going to be a top 5 offense again because he and Patrick Mahomes are actually unstoppable. So I've already hit my limit. You're unfortunately getting the brunt of this the exhaustion of the overreaction from the general public after one NFL game last night. But it was still a fun game to watch.
Good for the Lions.
And also the high powered Lions offense scored 14 points last night.
Yeah. Well, yeah. There are a lot of things to dissect about his name starts with a J, and apparently Patrick Mahomes just can't beat him. Whether that's because of Jared Goff or not is a different conversation, but
also
he's got his number.
There you go. Good for Jared Goff. I'm very happy for Jared Goff. So I suppose we can have Jared Goff today. There you go. And it's Brian Branch, the guy who picked it. The pick six is Brian Branch. So I don't think unless there's a J in the middle name there, but I don't care enough to go middle name searching. Nope. Sometimes I want to go middle name searching, and but not this time. Anywho, college basketball podcast dominated by other sports for the first 3 to 4 minutes on a regular basis. Today, no different, but it's Pac-12 preview day. If you are new, welcome. If you are new, you've also missed, what are we? This is 5, right? Mm-hmm. This is preview 5 of 6. We have done in alphabetical order the ACC, the Big East, the Big 10, the Big 12. And here we are for perhaps the last time previewing the Pac-12, at least this Pac-12 that has any teams in it that you recognize as a traditional Pac-12 team.
We'll have to have a conversation about whether the Pac-12, if it continues, constitutes a high major conference after this.
Absolutely, because right, it might be the epitome of. Now that's probably not fair, but it's not like. I don't know. I think we've had this kind of feeling about the Pac-12 in its current form about, it's not that often where you have like there's a serious conversation that there's only 3 good teams in a Power 5 conference. And not great teams, just good solid college basketball teams. That's a little different this year, and we'll certainly get into that. But yeah, perhaps as we know it, or even the last high major preview for the Pac-12, if there's some sort of rebranding of a conference like the Mountain West or whatever solution we end up with in about a year. Yeah. If you are new, we do this in 5 categories. We try to hit on as much of the conference as possible while being as efficient as possible, and we do that as follows. Category 1, the team you are most excited by. We follow that up with the team you are most intrigued by. Then we hit storylines and bounce around the conference as a whole and maybe sprinkle some teams individually. into that storylines category. Then we go teams that could make the NCAA tournament and a winner, because it would not be a conference preview without a prediction of the winner of the regular season, because we do not recognize the conference tournament champion as the champion of conference. That is gospel here on the Jays for Days podcast. Without further ado. Without further ado.
I thought you were trying to make some funny pun or something.
No, without further ado. Swing and a miss there. Josh, which team are you most excited for?
USC.
Sure.
The talent is, to put it mildly, impressive.
Mm-hmm. It's striking.
Yeah. You've got an elite backcourt with Isaiah Cutler and Boogie Ellis. You've got some pieces coming back. Not necessarily, outside of Boogie Ellis, not necessarily your offensive anchors from last season, but a lot of your role players. By and large, your interior is back. Vincent Uchukwu is there. See exactly what it looks like year 2 for him. Obviously, he had all kinds of things going on last season. You bring in DJ Rodman. Kobe Johnson was a 9'5", 2.5 guy. And then, of course, you've got this recruiting class. What does Bronny James give you if he's able to play? There are certainly question marks here. But I am fascinated to see what this team actually produces on the floor, because to me, their ceiling is exceptionally high. At the same time, I'm not convinced they're going to come close to reaching it. But that's what the excitement is I want to see what this looks like on the floor. I want to see just how good these guys can be. And they were 49th in both offensive and defensive efficiency last season. They're going to be really good defensively guarding the interior, just like they were last season, but they just weren't great at anything. They were just a very good team that didn't really scare you. They have the talent to scare teams this season. Got to see if they actually live up to that.
I think they're going to be excellent. I think they're going to be really excellent, actually. Which is a dangerous game to play with USC. I will concede off the top here that it's not a foregone conclusion that really high level USC teams on paper translate to really high USC teams on the basketball court.
Right. We've seen this before.
Absolutely.
Maybe not quite to this level, but the general story, we've absolutely seen this before, and it hasn't ended particularly well. Yeah.
I love guards, and this backcourt room is impressive even without Bronny James, who is, Bronny James and DJ Rodman are the names that are the sexy headlines, and they're, DJ Rodman not really a guard, but there are 2 guards on this team that for my money are better than those guys. And for people
sure.
who are seriously talking about this team, their money as well in Boogie Ellis and Isaiah Collier. Isaiah Collier, the number 1 player in 247's composite rankings, and truly a fascinating prospect for me. Because, and we talked about this with who do we talk about this? What pass first guard were we talking about?
Elliot Cadeau?
Yeah, maybe it was Cadeau. I think it might have been Cadeau. When was the last time the number 1 player in the class, the first thing you said about him was his passing ability? Ever?
The name that comes to mind maybe is Cade Cunningham, although I wouldn't necessarily say you talk about his passing first, but his overall playmaking.
Sure.
Ben Simmons? Ben
Simmons, maybe. That was the other name that came to mind. But he's so fun to watch, and the way that he, what's also really difficult to find is a highlight package of a prospect that has a bunch of passes in it. That's difficult to find, because you would think that Isaiah Collier was just the best scorer since sliced bread if you watched his slam highlights. And what he's going to do, and part of why I'm so excited is one, I think it was an important to replace some of the playmaking, the assists, and the passing of Drew Peterson, who's not there this year. I would love for Boogie Ellis to never have to pass the basketball, to have no responsibility of that whatsoever. And Boogie had an excellent year last year. It was career highs in pretty much everything. I think it was the same 3-point field goal percentage, but it was 2 more attempts per game than it was the last time I think it was like 38.6% from the 3-point line. His assist numbers have gone up every year he's been in college, and he averaged just over 3 last year. I would love for Boogie to never have to worry about passing the basketball, and if there's somebody who's going to help him achieve that, it's probably Collier. That's giving Boogie the freedom to do nothing but think about scoring, and putting him in positions to score is the thing that I think more than maybe anything else can help elevate USC. He averaged 17.7 last year. He could average more than 20 this year if he can just worry about scoring the basketball. And I don't know. I think that the other part of this is, I think all of those guards complement each other well, right? Whether it's, Collier, of course, Collier and Ellis and Boogie, of course. I think Kobe Johnson might take the biggest step from a production standpoint after watching some of what he's done in their summer tour and some of the games they've played this summer. That with more shots, that he's got the offensive abilities and the size to get a lot of good shots, especially in the mid range. But I think it's going to work nicely, and especially if Collier comes and has a consistent 3-point jump shot, or just any sort of perimeter, mid range, long 2, 3, just something to keep defenses honest and kind of unlock that passing ability completely. It starts there, but I think they're going to be really, really fun.
I am leaning toward I'm buying this and feel like they are getting slept on belief as well. There is part of me that just won't believe it entirely until I actually see this turn into a top 10 team.
Sure.
But I would not be surprised at all if we get there and we're talking about them as a legit Final Four contender. Because, like you said, they are, especially at that point when you get Collier a full season of experience, they are built to win with guards. And you and I both believe that is the easiest way to have success in March and April.
The other thing I want to just mention, right? I mean, Uwachukwu is back for hopefully a full season. I don't think that's an unimportant part of this. Aronson Page also comes from Wheeler, which is where Isaiah Collier went to high school. The two of them played high school basketball together, which, when you have a guy, Page is a high level recruit with talent in his own right. I do think that having a guy there who has chemistry that goes beyond, just the summer, with a guy like Collier, I think that can elevate both Collier and turn Page into a more productive player than he might have been otherwise. Joshua Morgan is back as part of the front court as well. This is the first time in a while for me that the talent at USC is usually impressive, or at least close to impressive. This is the first time in a while for me that there's more places to look than just one guy as to why I should be impressed. Evan Mobley, of course, was going to be awesome, but I wasn't super blown away by anybody else there. I feel like there's a world in which we are really impressed by multiple parts of this roster, and I think that's what makes it a little different.
Are they your most exciting team as well?
That's correct. Correct. Anything else on the Trojans here?
It is kind of funny how it's possible for somebody as highly touted as Collier to just fly under the radar this way because of the other the names coming in with him. This is a really good recruiting class overall. And it's not because of Bronny James, and the fact that you have a Rodman also coming in. It's just funny to me that, oh, by the way, they have this guy who might be the best high school player in the country coming too.
Yeah. It's absolutely, it is very, it's almost, it almost factors into why I think they might be even better than maybe people are giving them credit for preseason. And if Bronny comes back, it makes things even more intriguing because I'm and I said this when Bronny committed to USC way back in whenever that was. How long ago was that now? I guess back in early this year. Was that when it would have been?
Yeah, I think so. Hasn't been that long.
But this idea of Bronny being the type of guy that elevates a good team rather than completely changing a not so good one, with his defensive versatility, with his passing, with his shooting, with his basketball IQ, all those things that, and I hope that he plays this year, not just because that wouldn't be fun if he didn't get to play this season. And of course, him being healthy and being very, very sensitive with that return is, of course, the most important thing when it comes to Bronny. But I also think that there are some places that maybe there are a couple holes that he would be able to help fill, and he would bring some size to that backcourt, because that's the other thing. I don't really know how tall Isaiah Collier is. His 247 Sports profile says 6'3", 190. His USC basketball roster page says 6'5", 210. And I heard the guy on US doing play-by-play for USC summer games call him 6'4". So I have no idea how tall he is. If he is 6'5", then we don't have any issues. If he's still 6'3", and Boogie's not that tall either, then maybe there's a little bit of, but like Bronny, 6'4", 6'5", he could bring some size there as well, and just bring some of those glue things if he does get to play this season. But I think they're going to be excellent. I really do.
I'm with you.
Who are you intrigued by?
Well, I will say that USC is the runner-up for my most interesting team in college basketball.
Behind this team?
Yes. Would you like to take a guess?
I mean, for my money, the only correct answer is UCLA. Oh. For my money.
Another good choice. That's not who I have, though.
Seems like you went deep for this one, though, so hit me.
It's Arizona.
Okay, see, I'm out on Caleb Love. So I've got no intrigue there. I'm out on Caleb Love.
Interesting doesn't mean good or bad. It means interesting. And if Caleb Love is anything, he's interesting.
I guess, yeah. I feel like I know exactly who Caleb Love is.
I would agree with that, too. This is just a very eclectic collection of players for me. And it's also part of what Tommy Lloyd has done where this Arizona program is. So you got Umar Ballo, Pella Larson back. It's your second, third leading scorers. Basically, everybody else is gone. So you replace them with Jaden Bradley, Keyshawn Johnson, and Caleb Love.
Mm-hmm.
Then you also have this good recruiting class from last season that nobody talked about because none of them got to play.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Kylan Boswell he was the crown jewel of that recruiting class. He is the guy that's going to step into a much bigger role this season. At least, if things go well, that is what should happen. But there are other guys around him, too, that just didn't see the floor last year. So you could potentially have 2 or 3 of these now sophomores take massive jumps. And then there's just this idea of Okay, they're winning a bunch of basketball games.
Mm-hmm.
One, can Tommy Lloyd do it with a different collection of players?
Mm-hmm.
Guys who played at other schools, guys named Caleb Love that come with the good and the bad of Caleb Love. Can Caleb Love change the way people feel about him by helping this team win basketball games? Can Tommy Lloyd change the way, I don't want to say change Caleb Love as a player because I think that's going too far, but change some of Caleb Love's decision making and thought process is probably the better phrase, to rein him in a little bit and get him more integrated into what the team is trying to do, because this program is just fine without him, right? And I guess you could argue that for North Carolina too, because it's North Carolina, but that team was built around those two guards doing what they wanted. That's not exactly how this Arizona thing works.
See, I would probably disagree with that.
In what sense? Arizona?
In the sense of Caleb Love wasn't the best player on that UNC team. He's not going to be the best player on this Arizona team, and it still didn't matter what his decision when it came to his decision making.
Correct. I'm talking from a expectation standpoint.
I guess
that I don't think Hubert Davis ever. Well, if he did, clearly nobody listened. But it never felt like that was supposed to be built around Armando Bacot, even though he was their best player. Do you see what I'm saying?
I guess. I also don't think it matters where it's built around. I think Caleb Love's going to do what he wants.
And that's the big question here is if that is ever going to change, it's now. But if he comes and does the same thing in Arizona, then clearly that's what you're getting with him. So I have all kinds of questions, and we'll get to this more later. But I am just fascinated by this entire thing because this team is getting to a point where they need to have NCAA tournament success because of how good they've been in the regular season. There's a lot going on here, and it's just easy to forget that Jaden Bradley and Keyshawn Johnson are there too. In addition to Umar Balu, who's one of the best. They got an awful lot of talent and an awful lot of guys that haven't played together, and this is a team that made it work with Kirk Kriisa. So you gotta feel like if anybody can make it work with Caleb Love, it's them. So many questions, so many things that are interesting. They are my most interesting team in college basketball.
I will never again believe in a college basketball team where Caleb Love has the ball more than anybody else. Never again. I picked somebody else to win the conference as a result. If Caleb Love's not on this team, I pick Arizona to win this conference. That's how out I am on Caleb Love. I couldn't be more out.
And that's one of the other interesting things for me.
He's been bad for 2 straight years, except for 3 weeks.
Clearly, Tommy Lloyd didn't have to take him, right? This team has
sure. Yeah.
One, Tommy Lloyd has plenty of good equity built up with what he's done. 2, his team is awfully talented anyway. It's not like they were desperate for an injection of talent. Now, they needed to replace all of these guys that they've lost. But they still have plenty to work with, which is also part of this for me, is he clearly thinks this can work. Whether he's right or not is a different conversation. But the fact that Caleb Love ended up at this level of program with a team with these kind of expectations means somebody... I almost kind of thought he was just going to go somewhere where he could be the guy. Now, maybe that ends up happening here, but it's different because Tommy Lloyd has a vision, and he's really made this his own, and he's willing to welcome Caleb Love into that, and we're going to have to see how it goes. Because I'm generally with you that Caleb Love has at least lost the benefit of the doubt for me. That I will expect what happened in North Carolina to happen again until I see something different.
And what people don't realize is that the tournament run that Carolina went on is the
exception.
The exception to what happened at UNC. 100%. The entirety of the first part of that, of the first 4 months of that season, UNC hadn't beaten a quad one team. They didn't have a quad one win. Would be the correct way to say that. No quad one wins, and then it just kind of happened. And then we came back the next year, and it was right back to the way that it had been before February and March 2 years ago.
You break it into four halves in those 2 seasons. 3 of them were bad. Yeah.
And here's would you agree that would you expect Caleb Love to be one of the 2 best players on this team this year?
Best? Or what do you mean
or
by
most one of the two players that is most
involved,
that drives winning or losing the most?
Yes.
Who were those 2 guys last year for Arizona? What did everything revolve around?
I would say
it revolved around those 2 guys in the front court, right?
And you could throw Kriisa in there, I guess, to a certain extent. But right, the idea was they have the best front court duo in the country, probably.
Right.
Or at least right up there with, one of the top 3. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you take away 20 and 9 from Tabalis. In theory, Ballo should go from 14 and 8 to 19 and 10.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
In theory. And I just am not sure that Caleb Love is capable of setting up a big man like that. I mean, Armando Bacot went from preseason first team All-American to just like kind of irrelevant. And there was nothing he could do about it because Caleb Love had the ball all the time. Go ahead.
Sorry. Here's what I would throw out as a possible alternative. Jaden Bradley is sitting there capable of playing point guard.
Okay.
If it starts going that way, maybe Tommy Lloyd just says, I'm done. Jaden, go take the ball. We're not doing this.
Okay.
But I'm generally with you that I am not expecting this to be a revelation where Caleb Love is a completely different player.
And I will just like believe it when I see it, when the guy that they gave a bunch of NIL money to come to Arizona because he didn't end up at Michigan because of the NIL money. Like it's just harder to do that when that's the case. It just is. Because then people who fronted the money who are behind the money for the NIL deal are like, oh wait, okay, so I coughed up the money to get this guy here, and then you took the ball out of his hands, put him on the bench.
Yep.
I'm not saying that I don't like if he's bad, he should have those responsibilities taken away from him. I agree,
being should,
but he should, right? So, and maybe I'll fall flat on my face, but the people who think that Caleb Love's tenure at UNC should be described in any way that has to do with that championship run, like I wholeheartedly disagree with that.
You don't have to convince me of that. You know that.
And absolutely. But I feel like Caleb Love is talked about as a transfer as the guy who played really well in the NCAA tournament 2 years ago.
Right.
Because if we were looking at him as the guy he was last year and the way he does or doesn't impact winning on most nights, I'm just not like he wouldn't be as his transfer journey would not have been as big of a deal as it was.
Oh, 100%.
And
now, the final thing I'll throw out there to kind of flip that, and I'm generally with you, just to play the other side of the argument for a second. A program with this much talent that has struggled, going back to Sean Miller, to deliver in the NCAA tournament, and it has continued under Tommy Lloyd. Now, it's only a couple seasons, so it's not like you can just completely throw that narrative on Tommy Lloyd too. And it's not like last season was bad NCAA tournament wise, but it's not like they've just lost in the first round time after time. They did make a small run 2 seasons ago. Maybe you look at it and say, we don't need Caleb Love to get us there because we got enough talent around him. Again, does this actually work? I don't know, but that we can get in a position without either with him not necessarily helping us win the way that we would want or without using him as much. But what we need is somebody that can go kind of like Ben Matherin did in that TCU game to go win us games in March when chaos ensues, unpredictability ensues. And whether you want to rely on him or not, I know he is capable of doing that. Sure. That would be the other side of this. Specifically from an Arizona standpoint.
Sure. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. That would not be the stance I would hold, but that is the other side of it that I was thinking about as you were talking about the NCAA tournament part is, that dude can go get 35 and be the best player on the floor anytime he takes it. It's just not usually the way things play out.
It is. It's Russian roulette. You could get that. You could also get 2 of 15.
Right. Yep.
And a guy who doesn't know when to stop shooting.
Yep.
The team I'm most intrigued by is UCLA by about a football field and a half. A couple different things here. Mick Cronin took over. First year at UCLA was 2019-20. So we're in year 5 of Mick Cronin at UCLA. Here are his records: 19-12, 22-10, 27-8, 31-6. We've knocked two losses off the record every single year. But now there's no Johnny Juzang. There's no Jaime Jaquez. There's no Jalen Clark. There's no Tiger Campbell. So from a roster perspective, we're entering into a new era of UCLA basketball. And this is the type of year where I think we're going to get an idea of what type of program Mick Cronin's UCLA program is. And what I mean by that is not any sweeping declaration about the quality of coach or anything. It's just that there are very few programs in the country that you just expect to win 23 plus games every year, right? There just aren't that many of them. There are a lot of programs that they stumble into a really nice recruiting class, then they have a couple guys, or maybe not stumble, but you have a couple really high recruits that pan out really nicely, but almost like not immediately. They just kind of progress and they end up there for 4 years and then they're awesome as a senior, a la Jaime Jaquez, a la Tiger Campbell. And then you add, kind of in conjunction with that, you add your really highly recruited, Amari Bailey's, that kind of thing. And then you snowball into, like, you have a 3-year period like this one where you go from 22-10 to 27-8 to 31-6. Where do we go from here? Are we going to just expect UCLA to be a mainstay in the top 25? Like, that's the expectation every year, and they just kind of reload and retool, and then you have a really good basketball team pretty much every year, and they don't really ever have those years where they don't win 20 games. And that's a really elite place to be in college basketball, especially nowadays. That's one. 2 is that there are 12 of their 15 players are redshirt sophomores or younger.
Yeah.
12. And the only senior or 5th year on this team is Kenneth Nwuba, and Kenneth has never averaged more than 1.3 points in a UCLA uniform.
Yep.
Then you add on top of that there are 7 freshmen. 7. Like in the recruiting class, there were 7 of them. And 4 of them are not from the United States. So he went and using NIL expanded his recruiting trail to the freaking planet and went out and got guys that no one that we haven't seen play in AAU, that we've seen playing at U18 FIBA tournaments. And you get a guy that's that was 15th at 247 in 2023, and Adai Mara, who we'll see. He's kind of he's a European big. He's kind of he moves fine, but not awesome. He's not incredibly athletic. He's got some touch, but like it's just it's a archetype that we don't see as a freshman in college basketball all that often, at least not as a top 15 recruit in the country. And I've got no idea what basketball team that UCLA is going to put on the floor this year. So combining those two things, this international experiment that Mick Cronin is, because if it works, not only does it of course it not only does it work and you win basketball games, but you've now got a leg up if other programs are like, maybe we should try that. You're already the program who's A, done it before, and B, been successful doing it.
See Gonzaga.
Right. Exactly. And
I think specifically Tommy Lloyd, I guess.
Right. Sure. I think it's truly fascinating that Mick Cronin looked at this transition in UCLA's roster and this massive turnover, and the way he decided to attack it was not by going to the transfer portal. It was, I'm going to go put together an international basketball team because I can go to anywhere in the world and say, hey, you want to come play basketball in Los Angeles, in Southern California? And a lot of people will say yes. And by the way, I'll pay you to do it too. And he went out and did that. And we've got like a truly fascinating college basketball team that I have no idea. It's one of those teams that I got no idea. Absolutely no idea. It could be awesome. It could be completely forgettable, and it could be bad. But we have no idea, and I think it's fascinating.
And on top of all of that, these are not just international prospects that you don't know much about.
Sure.
These are guys, generally speaking, and specifically Adai Mara and Berka Bukachil, maybe to a little bit lesser extent, but that NBA scouts are salivating over.
Mm-hmm.
There's every chance that Mara is a first-round pick next year.
Right.
And also, we haven't even seen him play against college and I know nobody in this high school class we've seen play against college competition, but you've seen these guys play against each other in AAU or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We just have no clue. And also, there are some benefits to being in what I would say is a more professional environment in Europe, right, where Luka Doncic is playing in high-level, high-pressure games at the age of 18.
Mm-hmm.
So when he comes to the NBA, he's ready for all that because he was already a pro.
Right.
You know, everybody's story is a little bit different. Not everybody's Luka Doncic, but just there's that part of it as well. But also, how do you adjust just to the cultural shock? And these are not long-term prospects. These are guys that need to contribute for this team to be good next season.
Mm-hmm.
Because outside of the recruiting class, you're talking about Adam Bona, who's going to be good, and Dylan Andrews, who theoretically should take a big jump.
Who was here last year.
Right. And played a little bit and got some experience, you know.
Right.
He's one of those guys that you look at and you go, oh, that's a potential breakout star. He should get a lot more opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
I am with you. This is, to me, the most fascinating roster in the country of just because if it works, the talent is there. This might be the best team in the conference from a player-by-player standpoint. But also, that's a best-case scenario. If it doesn't work, they might not even be a top 4 team in the conference because there are a lot of other teams to feel really good about that we'll kind of start getting to here. Yeah, and to your point also that this is how Mick Cronin decided to try and build off of that first group of players and all of the success that they've had is to kind of go against everything that is trending and popular in college basketball right now. And I mean, I guess the international recruiting throws a little bit of a wrench in that, but to go super young, super unproven, super inexperienced.
They have the 14th ranked class according to 247 in 2023. It could be like the third.
Yeah, I don't even know how do you even adjudicate that based on the construction of this recruiting class.
Right. Like there could be like the talent there could make up. Yeah, like it's probably not Kentucky and it's probably not Duke, but it could be better than USC, who is third. It could be.
Yeah.
And And that is fascinating, and it's different. I like the point that you made about them being asked to come in and contribute immediately is really important here, because if you remember last year, Arizona brought in like 3 different guys from Europe, but none of them were, like you said, they have this freshman recruiting class from last year that no one knows anything about because they played like 6 guys.
Right. Henry Visar may have a really good season.
Right.
He played 5 minutes a game or something last year. We just don't know.
Right. So that's the other part of this. To answer your question, he played 7.1 minutes per game.
There you go. Yeah.
And of the guys who came from Europe, he was easily in that recruiting class in particular was easily the guy who played the most time. So it is fascinating. I've got no idea. This is not a commentary on if I think that team is going to be any good or not.
Right.
But
no
it
point
could
making
be
that
a team
prediction.
that it could be a team that we look up in like 4 weeks into the season, and like I was like, oh, like there are 4 really, really good basketball players on that team that no one really knew about. And I think there's a world in which we get to the beginning of Pac-12 play, or the meat of the schedule. Does Pac-12 play early season conference games? Do they do that too? I don't remember.
I'm pretty sure they have generally.
They play like 2 or 3 games like early in December or whatever. Anyways, the point being that when we get to January 1 and we're into conference play for the entire country, that we might be feeling differently about the very top of this conference if UCLA is hit on some of these guys that we just don't know a ton about.
So, looking at UCLA's schedule here, the Pac-12 schedule is not out yet. However, you're going to be excited about this. We're going to learn pretty quickly about these guys. First game at the Maui Invitational, Marquette, followed by Kansas or Chaminade.
Sure.
Also featuring...
I'll go out on a limb and say it won't be Chaminade.
Yeah. Also featuring, obviously, another game in that tournament and a trip to Villanova by December 9th. In addition to, I would expect... Yeah, there's no games between November 30th and December 9th in their non-conference, so I think that's typically where it is, right? December 4th kind of thing.
Sure.
So we'll see how that ends up looking. But regardless of what the Pac-12 schedule is, we're going to find out pretty quickly about these guys. That's exciting.
Arizona's 2022-23 schedule, they played Utah and Cal on December 4th and 1st.
Yep. There you go.
I can't wait. It's gonna be awesome. Storylines, what you got?
First one is just got one last ride with these teams, and really 2 parts to this. Can anybody make this conference nationally relevant? Because that's always been the struggle, right? Yes, UCLA got to a Final Four. Oregon's been to Final Fours recently. Were they ever one of the best teams in the country? No. I mean, from the very, very best, right? The shining moment was when everybody jumped on UCLA and had them preseason number 1. That was, I would argue, the most nationally relevant the conference has been in a while. But we're talking about, obviously, the names at USC, the potential of USC, the potential of UCLA, the potential of Arizona. This is maybe the best collection of teams that could end up being really, 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 really good. And I guess UCLA last season kind of got into that national conversation, but still I felt like they were just a step below in everybody, and it was more of a, they're clearly better than the rest of the conference, and Arizona was good, but they were just beating up on a bad conference kind of thing, as opposed to, look at how good this UCLA team is. You know? So can somebody just get into the top 5 and stay there all season, where you're looking at him as a number 1 seed, one of the favorites to win the national championship kind of thing? Because I can talk myself into that with multiple teams. And then the other part is just moving forward. Does anything happen this season that changes how we feel as these teams go their separate ways? Specifically, for example, UCLA. This was the other thing I was thinking about as you were talking. Going into the Big Ten, this year is going to be quite telling about what to expect, I feel like. Of course, they're not playing Big Ten teams, but the idea of, as you were discussing, can you just be a 20, 25 win team in the Big Ten? Can you turn a roster over and rebuild it from scratch and continue to have the same level of success they've had under McCrone? We're going to learn some things. And Arizona, same thing. You're bringing in a lot of new pieces here. Can you set that up and have the same level of success and integrate these transfers in a way you're going to need to compete at the top of the Big 12? Or are we a little bit more concerned about these teams as they go to their new conferences and feel like maybe they're not really quite up for challenging Kansas and whether it's Purdue, whatever teams you want to throw out there in the Big Ten just kind of takes turns as to who the best program in the conference is. But, can you compete consistently with the best of the best in these new conferences? I feel like this season's going to give us a good data point on that because of where some of these teams are at and what they are having to replace.
I think there's also a world in which this collection of teams that could be really good could also, I think the floor is relatively low.
Yes, absolutely.
It could, like, Caleb Love could be reinvented and it could be awesome.
They could be North Carolina last season.
They could be North Carolina last season. UCLA's guys could all click and we could have a bunch of guys that are like, wow. Or it could not. USC could have a season where their talent translates, or their talent it translates into a consistent top 7 team, or it can be kind of like it has been the last few years, where that's a really talented team, and you never feel like Andy Enfield got absolutely everything out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Which kind of leads me into my first storyline kind of in conjunction with that, which is there an elite team in this conference come tournament time? Do we feel like there's an elite team? And it's not just, there are 4 teams there that are somewhere between a 3 and a 6 seed. And maybe you've got, 2 or 3 more that are somewhere between a 7 and an 11 seed. And you're not really, no one's really having conversations about a Pac-12 team knocking on the door of a national championship game. And really it's just that's a really interesting game between a Pac-12 team that I don't have a ton of confidence in and FAU. You know what I mean? That could happen, or we could have 2 teams, 1 team that is on the short list, that's a 1 seed, that's on the short list of teams that you should be picking to make the national championship game. And we shall see, because there are several candidates for that.
Mm-hmm.
But there are also several candidates that could just be solid college basketball teams instead.
And I could also see Pac-12 teams, if they live up to their potential, being some of the really trendy picks.
Sure.
For the reasons we've talked about of, USC's that good? They've got a Rodman and a James? Let me see. Oh, their guards are that good? Guards win in March. I'm going to pick them. Or
maybe it's like that USC team that everyone had convinced themselves for the week was going to be the team that was going to challenge Gonzaga in the Sweet 16.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then they lost by like 20. Or maybe that was the Elite 8. I think it was the Elite 8, actually.
Yeah, because didn't they steamroll Kansas in the Sweet 16?
Something like that. Yeah. Not a great Kansas team. It was a 4 seed Kansas team or something.
Right.
But still, yes, I think that. And then of course it ended up not being super close, but a team like that.
Yeah, or I've seen Caleb Love do this before. Why can't he do it? It's easy I could definitely see a world in which they become kind of the teams that get a lot of hype, whether they should or not, if this goes well. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What else do you have?
Number 2, do we have actual depth? I can't wait to talk about this. I am honestly so excited for this conference this season with just the random collection of players we've got here. So let's go through some highlights. Washington. I have no clue if these guys are going to be any good, but you better believe I'm watching Keon Brooks, Xavier Wheeler, and Paul Mulcahy play.
Mm-hmm.
It's the most random collection. I absolutely love it. You got 2 other all-conference transfers coming in. Wesley H is a top 50 recruit. Again, this is a school that's had talent before, and it's snowballed in spectacular fashion. But they got real players there. Colorado, your best 2 players are back. You've got other role players back. Another top 5 recruit nobody's talking about in Cody Williams.
Mm-hmm.
And I will forever be an Eddie Lampkin guy. We'll see what kind of contribution he's able to make. But all I know is that dude is a force to be reckoned with in the paint. Utah, you've probably got your 3 most productive players back. 3 transfers who started at least 10 games for high major teams. 2 of them in the Pac-12 last season. Oregon State has 4 of their top 5 scorers back. What that means, I don't know. I don't have high hopes for Oregon State.
Doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. Stanford, 4 of your top 5 scorers are back. Plus you added Jared Bynum and Andrei Stojakovic, who might be the reason that Jared Haas still has a job. We do this with Stanford too, but they got the talent.
Mm-hmm.
Arizona State, Adam Miller, Kamari Lands are both intriguing additions. Talent level, not quite what it's been in years past. Cal.
And they lost all of their most important players from last year.
They don't have a lot right. It's Frankie Collins, and that you never count them out. Maybe this is the year when nobody is paying attention. Yeah, maybe when nobody's paying attention to him, that's the season they surprise. Cal, Devin Askew, a phenomenal offseason. Jalen Tyson, Fardaws Amack from Texas Tech, Jalen Cone. And then Oregon, you still got the Jermaine Couisnard, Keyshawn Bartholomew backcourt. Nafali Dante's still there. You've got a deep, talented recruiting class and transfers, all these new guys coming in. Some of them have experience at the high major level. Cairo Quendo was good last season.
Mm-hmm.
There are just, usually I can't even talk myself into most of the Pac-12 teams outside about the top 4. And I want to do that with every fiber of my being. This season I'm going, there might actually be 6, 7, 8, 9 teams that are pretty good. Not great, but teams that are worth paying attention to that could cause some damage, could make some notable noise in the non-conference, that are going to be fun to watch. I'm just genuinely excited about this conference pretty much from top to bottom.
This is the most teams I have that could make the NCAA tournament in years. For this conference. Yeah. That could.
I was waiting for the qualifier there. I was going to say, really? The most teams of any conference? That makes more sense.
No. The most teams that could make it in the Pac-12. Yeah. But it rivals the number of teams I had that could make the tournament in the Big Ten.
It feels like any other not high major conference in that sense. Yeah, there are a bunch of teams you got questions about, but you could also talk yourself into and see being NCAA tournament teams.
It actually feels quite Big Ten-ish the more I think about it.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I'm also not totally sure. Yep. I don't know about the elite nature of the Big Ten teams.
Yep.
Or at least I don't know about the elite nature nationally recognized in the Big Ten. I think Purdue will be elite. Yeah. I don't think anybody will care though until we get to the tournament.
Yes, but what is the traditional form of the Big Ten? Brutal from top to bottom. Somebody finds a way to win it, but you don't actually feel like they're one of the best 5 or so teams in the country. Sometimes they get a team to the Final Four. Usually that team just doesn't have enough talent and comes up short, and that's why they haven't won a national championship since 2000. Right. Absolutely. Same feel. It's a good comparison.
I've got Caleb Love in Arizona was on my storylines list because they weren't one of my most intriguing or most exciting teams. So we've done our due diligence with the Wildcats. I don't need to bring that one back up. Oregon has a 6-foot guard from West Lynn on their team this year, and he's a back-to-back Oregon Gatorade Player of the Year, and Peyton Pritchard is a 6-foot guard that went to West Lynn. So we'll see. His name is Jackson Shelsted. He's a top 30 recruit. We'll see what that means, but like that went pretty well for Dana Altman the last time he had a 6-foot guard from West Lynn. I think Oregon is interesting this year because I'm not like totally sure what kind of program Oregon is right now.
I'm not even sure Oregon is entirely sure what kind of program.
Right.
I think Dana Altman is kind of having to reset everything here. Yeah.
Right. You bring Shelsted is coming in, Kwame Evans Jr. from Montverde Academy. That headlines a top 15 Oregon recruiting class this year.
Yep.
Infali Dante, along with Evans, is there. Those are 2 of the top 4 recruits in Oregon basketball history. But then again, they had 2 of the top 3 last year because Kellel Ware is the second highest recruit of all time in Oregon basketball history, and now he's an Indiana Hoosier. Trivia time: who's the number 1 guy?
Ooh,
another tall, lanky guy from not that long ago.
Another tall, lanky guy?
Yeah, who was also relatively like, whatever.
Bol?
That's correct. Yeah, Bol is the number 1 recruit in Oregon's history. But I think like they have talent.
Oh yeah,
on that team this year, and I'm not totally sure what it's going to mean. Honestly, the last 6 years of Oregon basketball haven't been nearly as bad as they are in my head. And they have some like the Peyton Pritchard year and the Dylan Brooks year, and then the COVID year with Chris Duarte and someone else. They were both averaging like 19 points a game. And so the last 2 years, right, they're 41 and 30 over the last 2 years. That's definitely not what we had come to expect over the last, basically from Tyler Dorsey to Peyton Pritchard, that like 5-6 year stretch. Dylan Brooks, of course, like that's not the level of winning we'd come to expect from Oregon. So it's a little bit of a weird spot for them. But maybe the secret sauce is a 6-foot guard from West Lynn. that could be the secret sauce that we've stumbled into. But they're interesting for me as well. I really just wanted to point out there's a 6-foot guard from West Lynn coming to Eugene.
My third one we've kind of talked about as well. Just the battle at the top of the conference. How many teams are involved? How do we feel about those teams? Because to me, there's a very clear 4. What order those 4 teams end up in, I have no clue. Because we've talked about the Arizona questions. I would not be surprised at all if this doesn't work and they're nowhere near the top of the conference. I also think they're too talented to be, I was gonna say missing the NCAA tournament. I still am gonna say they're too talented not to make the NCAA tournament. But
I would agree with that.
They could absolutely just excuse themselves from the title conversation if things don't go well. USC, I argue, has the most talent of any team in this conference. We talked about that as well.
Yeah. You don't have to convince me of that.
UCLA, we just talked about. Well, it could be just about anything. And then I really, really like this Colorado team. Colorado is the safe bet with all these other teams that are just kind of combustible. It could be fantastic, or it could be really disappointing. Colorado is the high floor, slightly lower ceiling that makes you feel better about they're just going to be really good because you know these guys have produced. They were pretty good last season. They've added new pieces. If Cody Williams is what Cody Williams is supposed to be, they could be a really good basketball team. Are they good enough to actually win the conference? So that's, to me, it's just those 4 teams and how does this play out? How do we kind of evolve in our feelings about them throughout the season?
I like it. I'm out of storylines.
All right.
You got anything else?
No.
How many teams can make the tournament?
I went 8.
I also went 8.
Okay.
I will read mine off. Here we go. Arizona.
Yes.
USC.
Yes.
UCLA,
Yes.
Colorado,
Yep.
Oregon,
Yep.
Cal.
I did not put Cal.
Wow. I have Oregon, Cal, Stanford, and Washington.
Okay. So our switch is that I have Utah and not Cal.
Okay.
Just because of what you already have in Utah, the foundation of that roster. Cal would definitely be the next team for me, though.
Yeah, Utah for me is one of those teams that I just don't care if you bring everybody back from a 17 and 15 team. I just don't care. Respectfully.
And you have an injection of talent through the transfer portal that combination of continuity and talent improvement with a good coach, I talked myself into that. Cal, I'm curious for exactly what your thought process.
That and Lazar Stefanovic was your
Yes.
second leading scorer, and he plays for UCLA now.
Yeah. I just have a hard time seeing all of these pieces come together in a way for Cal immediately when, I mean, Jalen Tyson was really, really good for Texas Tech. That was a bad Texas Tech team for most of the season, though. In this, because Cal is absolutely going to be better. We have to reframe how we think about Cal. They are not the bottom of this conference. I'm right there with you. I wouldn't be stunned if they got into this conversation. I'm taking it a little bit slow until I see that this can work immediately.
I'm a believer in Mark Madsen.
Me too.
I think so. That's part of it. I think Faraz Amack will be way better than he was at Texas Tech. I just I'm not a huge fan of what's going on with that program, and I just think the talent is like if we're going to put Washington here, and that's maybe I don't think Mike Hopkins is a great coach, and I don't think Washington's talent is that much better than Cal's. On paper.
I will buy that. That is a very valid argument. If you're going to talk yourself into Stanford and Washington again, why not talk yourself into Cal too?
Yeah, that's probably the most concise and best way to put it.
I'll buy it.
Okay.
That's also part of my thing with Utah is I'll just trust Utah. If I'm gonna be optimistic about those other teams, I feel like I need to show Utah respect for being consistent as well. To me, it's really those 9. And the more I think about it, I have no issue adding Cal to that list too.
Fair.
I cut it off at 8, but I am very excited for Cal, and I am honestly rooting very hard for them because that would be a really cool story if they kind of turned this around immediately and built off of all the excitement from having such a good offseason.
And I suppose if I'm going to put Stanford there, I can't not put Utah there. So it's kind of a, there's a little bit of drawing the arbitrary line somewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, any of those teams that we've kind of thrown out there, I think I'm willing to entertain. I would probably put the over under of teams in this conference that make the NCAA tournament at 5.5.
I was gonna say 6. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that 5 would be a disappointing year. I also think that 7 would be is quite a jump.
Yes.
And you're looking at a team like, so if we game this out, right? Arizona, USC, UCLA, Colorado, those are 4, right?
Yep.
And let's say Oregon has a really solid bounce back year and they make the tournament. Then we're looking at a team like Washington or a team like Cal or a team like Stanford to make the tournament to get to 6. and that could happen. And I think the thing that we should mention is it looks like there will be more opportunities to get solid wins in the Pac-12 this year, which is also something we've talked a lot about the last couple of years, that if you don't jump on your opportunities as a team that's considered on the bubble, you're probably going to be going up against other high major teams that just have better wins than you. And that's just tough. I think it'll be a little bit better this year, and that could help. But in terms of, I would be disappointed. I would be surprised if they don't get 5 in. I'd probably land on 6, and I'd be surprised if they got 7.
Yeah, and the other part of that too is you are also in so much danger, typically, of having bad losses because of how many teams you play that are bad. Yeah. Right? It's not only that you don't get to play very many teams that give you opportunities for signature wins. It's also that you have to beat everybody on the road. You know, you have to beat everybody at home. I mean, that's all your games. Maybe more on the road, right? You can't afford or you got to win your home games. You're trying to avoid the road losses. That did not come out the way I was intending. You know what I'm saying, though. That,
yeah.
Right? We talk about this in the Big 12, that you can just lose games. It doesn't matter. The Pac-12 has typically been the opposite of that. But now if you're talking more like 2 or 3 teams, you sweep them or at least win at home, and then you're talking about, right, some wins against other bubble teams and things like that. Hopefully you get 2 or 3 of these top 4 teams that turn out to be really, really good, and now you're off and running with a much better outlook for the NCAA tournament.
So last year Arizona State made the tournament at 11-9 in conference. Oregon State made it 10-10, but they won the tournament, and that's the only reason they made it in. They won the conference tournament that year, so that's why they made it in. Everybody else that made it in had won at least 13 games. So a non-conference tournament champion that made it to the tournament, 10-8 Oregon, but they won the tournament that year in 2018-19. So it doesn't happen very often that a team, Arizona State in 2017-18 went 8-10 and made the NCAA tournament. So just my point being is that there are multiple teams every year in the Big Ten that go like 11-9 and make the tournament.
Yep. You can go under 500 in the Big 12, make it.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. What did Arizona State do in non-conference? Was that the team that got to number 1 in the country?
I was going to say it had to be, right?
I guess so. Yeah, Remy Martin, Trey Holder.
Yep.
Shannon Evans.
Yep.
Let's go look at their schedule. Yeah, they were in the top 5 in the AP poll from like basically the entire month for a month, from like the December 11th to January 8th. They were out of the AP poll by February 5th. That was the year they started. What is that? They started 12-0, and they beat Kansas and Xavier. Yeah. There you go.
Yep.
They finished the year losing 6 of their last 7. That's tough. I got excused by a Syracuse team in the first round. In the play-in, University of Dayton Arena. Yep. Is that the Syracuse team that went to the Final Four? I don't think so. No, they did go to the Sweet 16 though. Anyways,
of course they did.
You go. Of course they did. The 23-14, 8-10 in the ACC, 10th in the conference that year.
Yep.
All right. Hour and 9 minutes in. Give me a winner and we'll get out of here.
I went Arizona with a caveat.
Okay. He said I went Arizona, but here's why you can't come after me if it's wrong.
At least until mid-January, I would like to reserve the right to jump off of this at any point if it doesn't work. Because
I'll give you until they play their first Pac-12 game in early December.
Well, see, I want a couple Pac-12 games. That's the problem.
No.
How am I supposed to?
Hey, can I get like a fifth of the schedule to watch before I decide who's gonna win?
I just want 2 or 3.
I'll give you one.
Okay.
Well,
We'll revisit after.
Here. If
Well,
I will give you
first game
it
after
depends
the
on
first
who they
game in
play.
January.
It depends on who they play in early December.
Yeah, okay, sure. Yeah. And really, this is more about my reservations with the other teams. Because I know Tommy Lloyd knows how to win this conference. I know Umar Ballo and Paul Larson know how to win this conference. We've seen this happen with USC before. We've talked about that. I don't feel great just assuming it's going to be different, as much as I like this team and believe they're going to be really good. UCLA, I can't sit here and say they're going to win the conference because we have no clue what these guys are going to look like. And Colorado,
are we positive that Umar Ballo and Paul Larson know how to win this conference?
I mean, they've been the best team in the conference.
Yeah, but they finished second last year, and in the year that they won, it was Matherin, Tabellis, Coloco, Krissa, and Terry. That was your top 5 scorers. Umar Ballo was 6 and 4.
Yeah, he was coming off the bench. My point being, they have been around very successful teams that have navigated this conference well.
Sure.
More about Tommy Lloyd, but he still has players here who have been part of this success. That was more my point. Yes, they played limited roles, but. And Colorado, I really, really like them. I would be thrilled if they won the conference. I just can't take myself when a lot of the excitement is a freshman and Tristan De Silva and KJ Simpson coming back and saying that's the best team in the Pac-12. So you got to pick somebody that I don't feel great about for one reason or another. I'm going to bet on Tommy Lloyd and bet on Arizona. To me, they're just the team, the program I have the most faith in. But yeah, it will not take me long to get off of this and to pick somebody else if this doesn't go well with Caleb Love.
I got USC.
I figured as much.
I've got the University of Southern California Trojans. I'm in. I like guards. I don't like Caleb Love. There you go. I think it'll be close. But there's my caveat. That's my caveat when I pick a team.
Yeah, I think it'll be close.
In conference. I think it'll be close. It'll be a toss-up. But I think I've made my reservations with Caleb. I'm just not going to pick a team where Caleb Love has the ball in his hands more than anybody else to win a conference. I'm just not going to do it.
I don't feel good about it. But we've both done it before. Unsuccessfully.
You're right. We both have done it before, and it failed royally. All right. USC on my end. The Wildcats of Arizona. On Josh's end. Anything else before we get out of here?
The last thing I feel like we should recognize in this conference that we didn't talk about just because there's so many other interesting things. We got some coaching kind of moment of truth coming here. Washington,
Arizona,
Stanford.
Just kidding. That was a joke.
Washington, Stanford in particular.
Sure.
Maybe to a certain extent, Oregon. Can Dana Altman get this thing back on track? Then you've got kind of the other part of this, which is can Arizona and UCLA, as we've talked about, build off of what they have, what they've done, what they've become. Does Mark Madsen just get this thing going at Cal? Oh, and Bobby Hurley. That's the other one. I knew we were missing one. Those three: Washington, Arizona State, Stanford in particular. It's the same story every season. Like the rosters, a lot of talent there. They should be good. Usually don't make the NCAA tournament, or Bobby Hurley sometimes finds a way to sneak in. But there's a lot of pressure on those three coaches in a conference that's not going to be as easy to navigate to really step it up this season because they have the talent to do so. That's the other thing I'm looking at here.
I feel like Jared Haas has been 1 year away for like 7 years.
Yep. And it's also going into new conferences, the ability to just start with a fresh slate, new coach. There's a lot riding on this season. I am truly excited for the Pac-12, and I have not felt that way maybe ever.
Man, Usually we have to beg and plead someone to come talk about the Pac-12 with us. This year it's much more enjoyable. All right. I believe that's all we have for you today. We'll do SEC next week, and then we'll get into having some chit chats with pals and friends about these conferences leading up to the college basketball season. Please subscribe to the Jays for Days podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter at Jays for Days Pod. Check out the YouTube channel at Jays for Days Pod there as well. Actually, it might be Jays for Days Podcast, but if you type in Jays for Days Pod, you should be able to find it. Thank you so much for listening to this edition of the Jays for Days podcast. I'm Josh. He's Josh. And we will see you later.